Brand disclaimer. The views and opinions expressed by individuals on this platform, the callers plus invited guests, are their own. The information you hear does not reflect the overall views of all parties associated with this brand. We encourage everyone to research all things heard live or via archive for edification purposes. Discretion is advised.
Don't touch that dial. You're now listening to Debate Talk Radio.
Help keep the show on the air. If you want to help, you can send me a donation through PayPal. The email is debatetalkforyou@gmail.com or through Cash App, $SALSHOWTIME. Thanks for your support.
Peace. What it is, it's your brother Tyvon Swainell, aka the Orthodox Moor, aka the Seven Pillar Saracen. And this evening, I am pleased to bring to you, I believe for the first time to Debate Talk for You Radio, Minister Teotw and Yacoba of the End of the World Ministries. And I brought them on, and I'm bringing them on to talk about an interesting topic concerning genetics and DNA and whatnot. In particular, is the E1B1A Israelite Doctrine. Is it a sound doctrine? I particularly wanted them to come on and talk about this because I think that this topic is something that I've heard come up in the Israelite community and also in the conscious community concerning the fact that the conscious community will say that people like Garfield, etc., have made the claim that in order to be a West African, you have to be EM2 or E1B1A. I've also heard in the Israelite community some people who make the claim that in order to be an Israelite, you have to be E1B1A. I heard these brothers make a very interesting argument about autosomal connections to Israel that are very similar to a good brother of mine, Yehukana, shout out to him. And I wanted to hear their breakdown of it and hear what they had to say about it. So without further ado, I'm going to bring the brothers on. Shalom, family. How y'all doing?
Greetings, Brother Orthodox. Hi, family.
What's up, family? How's it going? What's up, Orthodox?
Yeah, all is well. Yeah, I thought this is an interesting topic, like I was saying, because it seems to be a hot button issue in a bunch of different communities. You know what I'm saying? Like, so the UA will talk about genetics and how it relates to Israel. Israel always talks about it. You have the conscious community talking about it. So first and foremost, I wanted to get y'all's take on the E1B1A Israelite doctrine in concept, on whether you're for or against it, or what you think is strong about it, what you think is weak about it, etc. And so y'all got the floor. Please go in.
Okay, this Minister Teotw. I would say the E1B1A concept is weak, right? It's not strong. It's not valid. It shouldn't be used. It's just something to cause problems in us presenting the real evidence to our community. Okay. First of all, you got to accept Darwinian concepts, right? And so your understanding has to be 50,000, 10,000, 50,000, 100,000, 200,000 years old, genetic mutations, right? You have to accept that because this is a Darwinian concept. Okay. And so it doesn't even line up with scripture, right? Jacob is not 50,000 years old. Okay. So, this argument is really weak just from that point. You're talking about one mutation on a single sex chromosome, the Y chromosome specifically, right? Now they're trying to tie that whole thing to identifying your forefather, right? But you can't even convict someone with their haplogroup, right? So the standard in the forensic community, right, is YSTR, right? Short tandem repeats. Okay, and basically that's repeating there's 13 markers, and on those 13 markers, they repeat these DNA checks, and if they find a match on at least 3, if not more, then there's a close match, right? So they're not even doing that. We're talking about a single mutation, and even in forensics, it's minimum 3 mutations on minimum mutations on 3 separate chromosomes. So, I mean, they don't understand what they're talking about when they say that. So that's my position.
Yeah, so of course my position is the same. But in addition to that, I think when we look at everyone else's discussion on this thing, it's not from a scientific point of view of understanding the data, right? As we mentioned in some of our shows, we are programmers. We work for Fortune 500 companies. We work for all different industries. We had to learn the systems. We had to learn how to interpret data. And it's the same thing, right? So, in order to write an application, you got to learn what the terminology is, right? Now, all you ever hear from these guys is that, it's a haplogroup. It's E1B1A. He's E1B1A. So if he's E1B1A, he's Israel, right? With no understanding of the science. And so when we look at stuff, we try to get understanding. Now, we don't claim to be geneticists, right? We don't claim to be bioscientists or whatever, right? What do they call the other guy? Minister tell you, whatever. You know what I'm saying? We don't claim to be that. So, but we do dig and we do study for understanding. And that's why, like, even what I say for Teotw Ministries, right? I mean, we're for the people who are the intellectuals who want to know and have understanding. And so, like, for instance, when we're dealing with the haplogroups, understand with haplogroups, you have haplotypes, right? And so you have what they call modal haplotypes. And so, these are derived from, DNA of specific groups of people, right? And so that if you understand within this industry of what we call genetics, there's a bias towards Europeans, okay, and the Jewish community, right? So, the two common haplotypes is what they call the Atlantic modal haplotype, right, which is based upon European genetics, right, associated with the R1b. Now, understand, all of those haplotypes and haplogroups, they find their beginnings in Africa, okay? Almost every single one of them, right? Understand that. And so then you have the second modal haplotype, which is the Cohen, right? We all hear about the Cohen gene and how, if you're Jewish, you have to be tied to this Cohen gene, right? Now, understand, according to them, the geneticists themselves, they got the test or that sample that they're comparing everything to from a white male Jew. Okay, so you got to understand where the data comes from, what type of data you're dealing with, what group of people you're comparing to, right, in order to get your results. And then we got to talk about what happens to those particular haplogroups, right, when they migrated, what we call migration, out of, quote unquote, Africa. Because if you look at it, most of the samples and examples point to a migration of all types out of Africa. So that's all I got to say about
it. Okay. So a lot of people, when they take DNA tests or they hear about DNA, they're somewhat familiar about hearing about the concept of like mitochondrial DNA and the Y DNA haplogroups, etc. But I hear you guys talking about, and correct me if I'm wrong, about a concept of being autosomally connected to Israel. Do I have that correct?
Autosomal, right. Well, autosomal is really, in our opinion, well, I think in any opinion, really, because when you understand it, autosomal uses 22 chromosomes, right? So the autosomal pairs are the pairs that are not the sex chromosomes, right? The X and Y. So those are left out. Autosomal is everything but the sex chromosomes, right? That's 22 pairs. And they look at the mutations on those pairs and look for matches, right? And the more matches, right, the Cinder-Morgan lines up, the more matches, the more likely you are related to a specific person. So when you go to 23andMe and it says we found a match, that's what they're matching on, autosomal. Okay. Haplogroup, if you notice, no one ever said I identify my forefather by my haplogroup type, right? Because you have some Gentiles with the same haplogroup. You have the Chadians in Africa with R1b. But then R1b is supposed to be the standard for the Europeans. How does that work when, those people never left Africa? Okay, so now you have to look at the out of Africa concept, right? Where all haplogroups originated out of Africa, which makes sense if Africa is where Adam originated, right? And they call him Alpha Adam. Now, from their concept, Alpha Adam is not the Adam of the Bible, but he's the first man. How they get that, right? But anyway, that's where you start from, and then there's mutations over thousands and tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands of years. That's how the haplogroup match goes. So, I mean, even the professionals say you cannot identify who you're related to by haplogroup.
You want to touch on that, Jacob?
Well, in addition to that, I don't know if you all saw the whole debate on Berean's show. And, I was debating a particular person and, they were talking about SNPs, right? And understand that's called single nucleotide polymorphism, which means there's a change on the nucleotide, right? There's a mutation. That's all that is. So the person on Berean was saying, you got to take a SNP. Well, you can't take a SNP, right? You compare a SNP. So like on a particular chromosome, like let's say you got what they call C and G on one chromosome, and the change on the mutation changes to TNA, right? That's a change on a chromosome. And so that's what they look for, these changes, and they look at the sequences and they do a compare. And that's how they determine, okay, well, I have a match here on this nucleotide. So when they're comparing autosomally, right, they're comparing these changes on the nucleotide to see if there's a match. Okay, so that's one thing they don't understand, that when you're dealing with a SNP, right, it's looking for what they call the allele frequency. Right. And they look at that particular location where that mutation on that chromosome occurred. OK, so understand that haplogroups is dealing with a common ancestor. That's all you can say with a haplogroup, is that there's a common ancestor. And according to them, 50, as Minister Teotw said, 50, 20, 100,000 years ago. So we're talking about a common ancestor before the white man was supposed to show up. Right. So, but yet the modal haplotypes, the two common ones are white folks. So you got to look at the data and understand and read it, right? You can't just say, well, he's E1B1A. All Israelites are E1B1A. But then you find some people who may not be Israelites, who may be Hamites, who got E1B1A. As I showed on Berean, there was a white boy who's like 97% autosomal white, with a haplogroup of E1B1A. That alone destroys the whole concept that E1B1A means they're Israel.
So real quick, why would that destroy the whole concept for people who hold that belief?
Because if a white boy is autosomal, which has more comparison, more points on the nucleotide that match, right? When you're doing a comparison, you're matching to more data, right? As opposed to one change on a Y chromosome, right? Then that means the comparison that's for the autosomal is more accurate than for the haplogroup. So therefore, if it's E1B1A and you're comparing that to the change for the SNP, right? Then of course you can say that it doesn't match. Well, let me rephrase that. I can't say that Yacoba, because let's say I'm E1B1A. If I'm E1B1A, I'm an Israelite, because this white boy as well is an Israelite. So now you have to say, okay, I know that he's 97% autosomal compared, right? That says 97% he's European. That's what they say. On the autosomal, he's 97% European. I don't remember if it was Italian or whatever, but he was 97% European. And if he's 97% European, that's 3% that he's not European, right? Which one you going to go with? The 97%, which is matched to the autosomal, right? Or you're going to go with the haplogroup that says E1B1A. And according to the quote unquote, conscious community, E1B1A means you black, or that means that you're an Israelite. It doesn't work. Okay, so you got to say, okay, well, everyone's E1B1A, or there's exceptions. And he's obviously an exception because he's 97% European according to autosomal comparison.
Right. And I like to add too, I mean, like say, you're talking about a main haplogroup or a major haplogroup like E1B, right? That's patrilineal top layer. Every subclade is a descendant of, say, E1B. right? But yet the people who talk about E1B1A being Israel, E1B1A is Israel, but E1B1B is some other group, but both of them are descendants of E1B, right? The subclades are just mutations, right? And those mutations, even though Darwinian theory puts it at thousands of years, mutations can happen a lot sooner than that, right? And so they only calculate the ones that they consider old mutations. So, that's another issue because everyone on that E chain is a descendant from E1B, right? If you go with that argument.
Mm. So I think people who would back the argument of the E1B1A concept would say, well, isn't that person, the European you just brought up, well, isn't he still like 2.5 or 3% autosomally E1B1A? And then they would probably ask the question, well, how much autosomal DNA does one need in order to be able to claim Israel then?
Well, it's just like... Go ahead, man. Okay. Well, it's just like matching anything, right? You want to compare against more data points, right? And the more data points you have a comparison to, then that's the closer or the more accurate result, right? So the less matches you have, the less that person is, let's say, whatever you're comparing it to. So if I'm comparing it, for instance, when my brother compared ours, because we went to two different, I went to Ancestry, he went to 23andMe, and we compared our DNA, right? And we compared, and he can talk more about it because he did the comparison. But our matches, because we're identical twins, was off the chain. I mean, so there was more points that matched autosomally that showed that we were related. And that's why they use autosomal to determine whether or not you're related to somebody, because you cannot determine who you're related to based upon haplogroups. And they want to say, so that you have the Israelite community that want to say, okay, E1B1A is all Israelites, right? And that you can determine who's an Israelite by the haplogroup. But the scientists themselves, right, the geneticists themselves, like Dr. Nathaniel Jensen, he says you cannot determine who's a Jew genetically. It's impossible. You cannot determine those type of things. And so, you know why they can't? Because they didn't go dig up a body somewhere and find, oh, we know this is a Jew. He's from like 6,000 years ago or whatever. And we compared your DNA to theirs and there was a match. They didn't do that, right? But they try to say they do that with the whole coenine thing, right? And so Minister Teotw could talk more about that match that we had as twins. So, understand that the more data points that you have, the more accurate the result, the closer the match.
Well, haplogroup is really just a single mutation. The argument for them is that this thing doesn't mutate often, which is not provable, and in my opinion, it's not true. It's not verifiable, and if you look at the language of the scholars, it's hypothesized, right? That's their language, right? Maybe, could be. We hypothesize that is like this, right? That's their language because it's theory. Okay. Now, when you deal with autosomal, like I said, you're dealing with 22 chromosomes. When you're dealing with haplogroup, you're talking about one chromosome, which is the male chromosome, with a single mutation that you're looking at. Okay, so you can't, so if you go to court and you try to say I'm that baby's daddy, you're never going to do that with haplogroup. You can't do it. Okay, you have to use autosomal. You have to look at the 22 chromosomes and narrow it down and say, okay, I looked at almost every part of this guy's DNA, his chromosome, and looked at the mutations. Oh yeah, he's the father of that kid. That's how it works. Now, if you want to identify that you're an Israelite, as my brother said, you need to go dig up them old bones and run some DNA. But here's the problem, right? Ramses the third is E1B1A. So now they're gonna say he Israelite because they don't have an answer for that, right? But Ramses the third, right, a Egyptian pharaoh, was E1B1A. Okay, now that right there blows the whole argument out of the water.
Okay, so I think, and shout out to my brother Anonymous. a fellow Teotw host. He wanted to jump on right quick. He's also been in conversation with Garfield and Ngozi and a bunch of other people in the conscious community, etc. In terms of genetics and whatnot. So I think he'd be good to have on the panel as well. But I think the people from the E1B1A community would say, like, okay, like, so if you're talking about having to line up genetically with people and you want to be able to line up as close as possible, what genetic information do you have that you can connect as autosomal Israel if there's no bones that have been dug up to say, okay, this is the original Israelite DNA, etc.
Well, yeah, I mean, we could go with, okay, how this all started, like with Sister E and Berean when she was on there and she was talking about she's an Israelite, and they called her out and they said, look, prove it, get some DNA. Okay, she went and ran her DNA. Okay, we ran it through GEDmatch, and it comes back she's related to the Lemba. And the Lemba are identified even by the Ish people as being Jews, right? We ran ours through GEDmatch. It says we related to the Lemba. They say, oh, no, you using the wrong project. Okay, so now we switch to DodyCat. Now DodyCat says we related to the Ethiopian Jews, the Moroccan Jews. I'm like, come on, how much proof do we need? Okay, and so to answer your question, if we run our autosomal results through GEDmatch, right, you can find out that even those environments match us up to Jews, and it doesn't have to be MDLP because they claim that we're using it wrong. But if we use the other ones, it still says we're Jews.
And I'm gonna say this right quick, and I ain't gonna give the name, but there's a certain person in the conscious community who ran his, and his showed the same as everybody else who's a descendant of slaves on them slave ships, showing Lemba and all that, but he don't want to admit that.
Right. And to you guys' point, so I've taken DNA tests on with 23andMe, with Family Tree, and with MyHeritage, and I've done GEDmatch and all that type of stuff, right? And so on my father's side, his Y haplogroup is EM132, right? So definitely not EM2. I mean, it's before the break between E1B1A and the E1B1B. You know what I'm saying?
So your connection is their ancestors' ancestor. You see?
Yeah. No. Exactly. Right. Yeah. But with other people in my family who've also done the DNA test and whatnot, we both come up with Moroccan Jewish and with Ethiopian Jewish and whatnot. But then on my mother's side, right, her father is EM34. He got the Natufian DNA, right? So that's in my autosomal, right? When I run through GEDmatch, it says that they got 30% Natufian and I got 17% Natufian. You know what I'm saying? And when you run that DNA, they're connected to the Ethiopian Jews. They're connected to the Yemenite Jews, etc. You know what I'm saying? Sephardic Jews, Moroccan Jews, you know, all that. You know what I'm saying? And so when I run their stuff through GEDmatch, they're coming. When I put them in DodyCat, they came up with Moroccan Jew number 1, North African Jew number 2, Ethiopian Jew came down somewhere like 5 or 6, and then they got at the bottom they got connected with Yemenite Jew. So yeah, just to add to that conversation. What's up, brother Anonymous? I know you got a question. I know you're ready to jump in.
I mean, you know, first off, shout out to the twins, man. Unlike a lot of the brothers, like I've been following you guys for years before now. You were some of the brothers that I first came into when I first came into this walk, which caused me to start to study DNA and started to cause me to study a bunch of different things. So I'm very familiar with your work. You know, there are certain things I want to talk to y'all about and see how y'all arrived at it. But since we talking about DNA, y'all have hit the nail right on the head. And since we got a hater in the chat, if it's okay with y'all, I'm gonna go ahead and get down real quick for about 2 or 3 minutes. These brothers have set the standard and let you know the game that you want to play about trying to set a Jewish gene is asinine. And I'm being nice when I say that. Respect to Sal's platform. Shout out to the brother Moore. Shout out to Sal. You know what I'm saying? What we do see is genes that are common, right? Or DNA or ancestry that is common. So much like the brother Moore, I'm EM180. And so people will say, oh, that's pure African, as if we were landlocked. And so there's a lot of things that we got to start to deal with. Number one is migration pattern, right? Migratory pattern plays a huge role, or what DNA companies will call reference panel, where they get their reference panel from. And those reference panel genetic samples have to be attached to who those people say they are. So for instance, the Gagdagme, and I love to use these people, the Gagdagme, if you look into their genetics, they're going to tell you, like, the ones that claim to be Israelites say we even speak a different dialect than the other people in this tribe. That's because they migrated differently. When you start to study this, so there's a brother that said the Lemba DNA is not quote unquote Jewish. We can play that game. I'm not here to attack anyone's religion or anyone's DNA. But what you find out when you study those people is they have a stronger claim than those people that you may be trying to support. And why I say that is because they're closely or more genetically connected to all of the other groups that have this same claim. Now, why does this become important? Is because when I study things like the brother Moore, I think brought up the Natufian. The Natufian is one of the groups that pour into all of these Levant or Middle East people. And then as things start to move and progress, now we move into various tribes and all of this, and we start to find a common link. And that common link is going to be what these brothers was talking about. It's different mutations. And so that's why when I study I got Ancestry, I got 23andMe, I got My True DNA, I got GEDmatch. We can keep going on and on and on. Guess what, family? I didn't come back Gagdagme. I didn't come back Fulani. I came back Lemba, just like my brothers here. My most common genetic link is to the Lemba, just like these brothers. Sister E, Yehukanan has the same conversation. That tells you something. And then when I look and we figure out how, it's by way of the Ethiopian Jew, of the Tunisian Jew, of the Moroccan Jew. I dare any of you to try to take me to task. You don't got to worry about these brothers. You want to debate? I got you. I'm your Huckleberry. We got the genetic proof to prove it. And I'll sit there and deal with you all night. Right? We're not sitting here saying, oh, we beating on our chests, yada, yada, woo, woo, woo. No, I'm trying to say now at this point, if I'm supposed to be somebody else, why does my DNA look like this? Because I'm those people. I'm those people. It's that simple. I don't care if you like it, love it, hate me. I really could care less. These are my brothers on here. I'm genetically related to them. And that's what you learn when you study the DNA. When you study Lemba, like, why am I coming back connected to that particular tribe? They're an East African tribe. Why does all of my genetic connection points come back East African, South African, or Southwest African? Because of the reference panels. I dare you to study that.
You know, it's interesting, though, that the haters ignore all of us having similar DNA. Right. And they say, well, everybody not Israel, right, but everybody came on that same ship, and everybody right, DNA sure looking like we are related. Right. But they like ignore that.
Right. I saw your reference panels, and then I saw mine, and I got emotional, fam.
I haven't seen anyone that's a Negro from the Atlantic slave trade that doesn't match the Lemba. I haven't seen it. The ones I've run, the ones I've seen on YouTube, I'm like, there's an issue there, because now, you know, they say, well, not all of y'all Israel, but according to the prophecies, Israel, we all Israel, and our DNA is backing that up. right? So yes, all of us from the ATL, Atlantic Slave Trade, are the Israelites.
And G-Con matching as well, but he hating.
Yeah. Well, you know, he always hate, bro. He got body slammed in that last debate.
So, but yeah, I just, I just wanted to come in, and I know Yehukanan is going to say some things as well. I have some debates that's coming up with this. I'm dealing with the transatlantic slave trade in about, 9 days now. The desire for people to try to make themselves relevant for hating and attacking Israel, and I want to say this to you brothers too. I'm out here fighting. I'm in the bar rooms. I'm fighting. Sometimes I lose my character or whatever.
It means scholastic bar rooms, fam.
Scholastic bar room. I ain't getting drunk. You know what I'm saying? I'm in some of these other panels and fighting. Let us do that. Y'all keep doing what y'all doing. You know what I'm saying? We build on the other side.
Yeah, facts. We got shooters on the hill. Don't even worry about it.
Because, like right now I see a certain. No, and so he's saying, so most West Africans had Lemba DNA. See, this is what they try to do to try to play a game. Who said that? No one said that. I don't know. We'll be situationally dependent at this point. I have no problem in saying like we'll deal with it case by case, and then once we get there, we'll play. But to the prophet who has done the work says we owe it to ourselves to start to do the genetic studies, because people at one point said that there was no Lemba DNA that we would find in us here.
Facts. And I was on the panel when he said it, fam.
You see what I'm saying? I was told that there was no way that I would be connected to anything that was connected to being an Israelite. And now the only thing that I'm connected to is people that say they are Israelites. Kick rocks, fam. And I'm being nice because I'm on Sal's panel. You know how I feel about you, bro. That's in the chat. I will cook you.
It's interesting that not only does the DNA, but the history lines up to us being Israelites as well. We've done that. We've done the work. And here's the thing. They don't have any excuse to act like they're ignorant. They're willfully ignorant, right? Because we give them all the data, all of the information. We do all the legwork. We go and go get the history books. We see the truth lining up with the science. So it's like, it's not just the science, it's the history lining up with the science. And people like To the Prophet know who we are, right? But To the Prophet got to walk a line, right? His funding comes from those other people out there in the Middle East. So you got to understand, To the Prophet ain't gonna just come out like Harry Rosenberg and say, yeah, those people in Africa. Same thing with what's his name? What's the guy who owns Seafood, right? He admits who we are, but he want to try to add everybody else in. I'm like, is everybody losing their mind? Is everybody crazy, or is there truth here? Because everybody seems to agree with us and not with the conscious community.
Well, like you mentioned with the history, I mean, the history came like a storm, man. I mean, we hit them with an Armageddon storm with that history. It overwhelmed them. And I mean, everywhere you look, right, there's an article about Israelites on the west coast of Africa. Right. I mean, almost every tribe, right? You could almost find every tribe in West Africa, and there's an article about them being Israel. So like, what are we debating?
Somebody say To the Prophet debunked that claim.
When?
That's what I want to know. When?
Look, we got to the point, brothers, where brother was trying to tell me my DNA is not what it is. So then I show him that it's EM180, and that 60% of us probably, hail from this lineage. And that's the end of the discussion. Now, like, we don't want to have that conversation. Now we want to play with the Exodus, which we more than equipped to have a conversation about. So, I see a lot of games being played, and certain people want to play the game. Look, if that's not your heritage, it's not. If you reject it, it's your choice.
That's what I say.
That's your choice.
Yeah.
Right. But I know a whole bunch of us are. And so when we run into the problem is not when we try to identify everyone else, it's when you try to deny who I am.
Yep.
Yo, hey, shout out to Teo and the twins. Shout out to Moore and Anonymous. Um, I think my DNA autosomally it does line up. My paternal line is R1B, and so autosomally I connect with Yemenite Jews and Ethiopian Jews and Moroccan Jews. Also, I mean, which I'm surprised with me having an R1B, I strongly connect with the Lemba. More and Anonymous had me go on this was it True Ancestry?
My true ancestry.
Yeah, my
Yeah,
true answer. I've literally
true
never
answer.
seen anybody connect.
Dead match too, though, bro. So keep going.
Yeah, I've never seen anybody connect closer to the Lemba than Yukonon. That blew my mind.
Right. I'm talking about the number is crazy, fellas. Like it's nuts.
Yeah, and so from my history, from what I look at, I see a number of different haplotypes that actually autosomally they share DNA with other Jewish populations or Jewish communities that's scattered out throughout all the world. And so for anyone to actually say E1B1B is the DNA for to be an Israelite, you would have to dig up a body to make that claim. You know what I'm saying? So autosomally, even though a lot of us have different haplotypes, but autosomally we share the same DNA. And if you know anything, really haplotypes only count for like 1% of your DNA. And autosomally is where it's the majority basically of your DNA of who you are. So with that, I'm a yield.
So just to clarify real quick, so on this panel we have paternal haplogroups of EM132, I believe G. The twins, y'all are both G, correct?
Yeah, correct.
And then so Yukonon's R1B. My man Anonymous is EM180, right? However, autosomally we all have DNA that connects us to the Lemba, Ethiopian Jews, Moroccan Jews, other North African Jews, etc. And also people whose DNA was found in the land of Canaan in terms of the Netufis, because in GEDmatch you can check your Netufian DNA, your connections to Netufis and whatnot, and the DNA collects that they found there, again are they found EM34 or upward clads of that one, and then they also found, I believe, EP2 there, which I believe would predate even the E1B1A concept, right? So there's a lot we have to look at and slow down and really just take a look at it, in the sense like we all of us here have different paternal haplogroups, but we all connect autosomally to the same people.
You know what that tells you? That tells you that the haplogroup scientific argument is flawed, right? If not downright bad and not usable. That's what it tells you, because you can't, like I said, you need autosomal to identify relationships, family relationships, right? And all of these sites you go to, when they match you up and say, hey, we found a new match, is based on your autosomal DNA, and they say, oh, that's your third cousin, that's your fourth cousin, that's your second generation cousin, all based on autosomal. But they don't do it with haplogroup. Why? It's theory, right? I have a video where I say haplogroup is a guessing game. Okay, and if you read the papers, they always use words like hypothesis. We hypothesized. It might be. Okay, that proves to you right there that this thing is not meant for public consumption. This is scientific talk and scientific theory. If you want to know who you related to, autosomal is the only way.
Correct. And that's why I say, and I tell more of them all the time, like autosomal, hands down, nobody can debunk that. You mentioned centimorgans earlier, and so that just shows a genetic linkage of how many times they cross. You know what I'm saying, to show you how related you are to a person. You know what I'm saying? So let's say I think the body has, I believe, 6,000 centimorgans. So your parents would probably share like 3,000 centimorgans that you would share with them. Because each time you get away from each parent, it goes down like half the number. So like you would only have 50% of your mom or your dad's DNA, and then you would probably share like 25% with a sibling, and then like 15% with like a first cousin or something like that. So as it goes on, it gets lower. You know what I'm saying? It gets lower and lower.
Yeah, hit that like button if you're part of the mixed multitude family. But yes, sir. So I know a lot of people are going to be asking the question from different communities, like, okay, like, so in the Bible, it has this concept of the seed of the father and the seed of the mother, and taking the census via the seed of the father, et cetera, or all them kind of things. So is it y'all's position that the Bible confirms or goes against the concept of Y DNA and mitochondrial DNA?
See, it's like what Minister Teotw said. Haplogroups is flawed in concept because there's mutation when you have your son or your daughter. When you have a child, there's a mutation, but they don't count it. They only count mutations that go back to like 50,000 years, right? So there's always a mutation, right? Which obviously makes sense, right? Because we always have different people. Your genes are always changing. Your genetics are always changing. And so if you try to look at that as the, to identify a group of people, because the powers that be says we only look at mutations because they don't change that much, but only every 50,000 years, which really isn't true because it changes all the time, right? That in and of itself is flawed, which is why, all you can say is, guess what? I have an ancestor that was Uncle Bob, right? And then Anon have an ancestor that's Uncle Joe, right? We still related, but he got a different ancestor than me. We still cousins. You see what I'm saying? And I don't know if I answered your question, but like autosomal is the only way to really determine, okay, yes, that is my bloodline cousin over there. Just like they would determine that my brother and I are identical because we were like so high that it's, we were pretty much the same person on it, right? So right. I don't know if I answered your question, but go ahead.
Well, so a child gets 50% of his DNA from his mom, 50% of his DNA from his dad, right? And then there's such a thing as what they call crossover, right? And there's certain chromosomes where the mutations are, and they have the same location. The mother has a similar pattern, and they're gonna meld, and it's gonna be a mutation just from that. Okay, it's called crossover. And so biblically, an Israelite is based on his father's DNA, but he only gets 50% of it, right? So the problem is people are trying to use this concept of a single mutation on the sex chromosome as being something you can follow. And the problem is that mutations happen all the time. And this is why, like I said, if you go and look at the papers, the scientific papers, the language is not definitive in the scientific papers. The language is definitive in commercial papers, right? Like, magazines, newspapers, things like that, right? People who trying to sell you haplogroup tests like 23andMe, right? It may be more definitive, but even 23andMe will tell you, hey, these are the reasons why your haplogroup may not match your brother, things like that. They have articles on that.
Let me tag in a little bit real quick. The problem with the haplogroup conversation is that then we don't go deeper into where we're from, right? So I get a haplogroup determination from 23andMe or Ancestry, and that's it. You're Nigerian. You're this, you're that. You're an idiot. You're an idiot. I'm telling you right now. Like, I'm going to say with these brothers, I don't want them to have to say, you're an idiot. You're a stark, raving, mad idiot. If you can't tell me where I come from specifically with a tribe in Africa, then why are we having a conversation? Because I guarantee you, once we start to dwindle things down, you're going to find out that there are several reference panels that come out of Nigeria. There are several reference panels that come out of Cameroon or wherever you're trying to say it is that I'm from. Tell me where I'm from in Africa.
Yeah, real quick. How many ethnic groups are in Nigeria alone?
Bro.
We're talking at least 250, fam.
There's a ton of tribes.
Yeah, and not just that. We're talking about people who are numerous. Like we got big tribes. So when they take, when Anonymous is talking about like the panels that they're taking or like the sample sizes, right? You got to understand that like, so like you might have tribes that have like 40 some odd million people in it that have multitudes of clans, and they might be testing. They might be testing a percentage of a percentage, and not be testing every clan. You know?
But do you see the deception there? I mean, like when you look at those sample sizes for these tests, that you go, you know, it's like 50 people. Okay, so you probably sampled a single tribe, and that's another problem. You know, they make an argument that all of Africa is E1 something, right? And then you look at the sample sizes, and they're like minute in every case.
Yeah,
we test
like four people.
Yeah, sometimes it says little as 4. You know, maybe they average 20, right? On the average, every certain tribes maybe 50, but then they don't tell you, oh, we went across all of West Africa and sampled, you know, yeah, you know, so. I mean, you may have just sampled one particular tribe and his mama, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
So, I mean, that's the problem. They're not giving us information on how they actually perform these tests, but they want us to accept this argument of haplogroup. But as I said, you know, their documentation uses terms like hypothesis.
I'll say that they're giving us the information. They're just not standardizing. You know what I'm saying? So it varies greatly. But people just see these. They'll click Wikipedia, do the Wikipedia scholarship, and see the percentage. Like, oh, see, but they can't even see the same graphs that they're looking at. So that will tell them the sample size is 4 people, 10 people, 15 people. Sometimes you'll get one that has like 800 people. Cool, that's what's up. That's cool. But now you have a large disparity between the one that says 4 people and the one that says 800 people.
How many people in Africa, fellas? Like 1.5 billion,
something like that. I mean,
yeah. And they're making a claim based on these minute sample sizes for 1.5 billion of people in Africa. You know, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, DNA is still new with the you know how they're trying to do it with this ancestry. It's all new, and you see, like if you have 23andMe, you can see that they're constantly updating, and they're trying to get it narrowed down to communities that they have. I know 23andMe is doing it. My Heritage is doing it as well. They're trying to narrow it down to like where they can give you a tribe or a community that you're actually, you know what I'm saying, share DNA with, instead of just doing regions. Because, you know, normally they just do regions, right? They would tell you you have 5% from Nigeria or West Africa, and then you have 10% European, and 2% Indian, and 1% Middle East. Now they're trying to, you know, basically connect you with those populations. So,
but you got to watch the methodology on that too, though.
So now
you got to watch the methodology on that too, though, because they might be using the same concept they might be trying to copy the same principles as African ancestry, right? And the way they do it, like they only follow the mitochondrial or the paternal DNA. They don't do anything with the autosomal or whatnot. You know what I'm saying? So they'll give you a certificate saying, "Oh, okay, on your mother's line,
that's why I like
your mother's mother was Fulani, or your father's father was Yoruba." You know what I'm saying? But they don't like, so to what y'all are talking about. The way they're connecting people to the tribes and the way they're connected, they're comparing the genetic mutations is not on an autosomal level. Do you know what I'm saying? So even the way that they're going to be trying to do it, and they're currently doing it, and making you pay out the nose through it for it is very flawed in its methodology. Period.
But so think of this as well. What they do and how people use it. They'll say things like, "Okay, you have a match with Moroccan Jews, you have a match with Yemenite Jews, you have a match with Ethiopian Jews," stuff like that, right? Or they'll say you have a so much European. Well, you got to break that down, because there were European matches of people who were black, right? The Moors were in Europe at that time, and some of their DNA, like the R1B and stuff, is in Europe as well, but they don't tell you that. So then when you go to the Gad match and you go down and break it down even more, you start seeing things like Ethiopian Jew, Yemenite Jew, all these things, you get the details. But, the people who don't want to use their intellect, the ones who just cool on E1B mantra or E1B1A mantra, they don't want to understand because it's too complex. It's like the people who get to decide for school. I got an elective of PE, or I have an elective of computer science. 95% of the people are going to pick PE, right? Because they don't want to learn. They don't want to use their brain. So then when somebody else come and tell them about computers and stuff and how it works, I don't want to hear it, right? And that's pretty much what we're dealing with the conscious community.
So one guy said haplogroup is pretty accurate. Okay, let's take that as a fact. Okay, if it's accurate based on results, as I mentioned earlier, that makes you a Hamite. Okay, because Ramses III is E1B1A. Okay, so we could close the chapter on that. If it's accurate, you're a Hamite.
But you know what they're gonna say? Oh, he was an Israelite.
What else can you say? Because if you think it's accurate, you don't have no other argument. You still dealing with one mutation, and then the argument is a Darwinian concept based off of tens of thousands of years ago, and the Israelite nation didn't even exist that long ago. So I mean, you got a lot of problems with your argument. But the main one is Ramses III is E1B1A, and your only argument is going to be that he's an Israelite, which is ridiculous.
Yeah, but this is the thing. The 50,000 years and the 60,000 years, because I got this book by David Reich. It's called Who We Are and How We Got There, Ancient DNA in the New Science of the Human Past. These and even in his book, he's a geneticist, and he says that basically those times are basically kind of inaccurate because they're basing it off of of the mutation rate. So the mutation rate, I think they said, is at 1,000. Yeah, is at 1,000 years. So the time is really not accurate. So to say E1B1A was around 50 or 60 or 100,000 years ago is a theory. You know what I'm saying? Or just to say R1B was around 11,000 years ago, it's really a theory because they're basing it off of the mutation rate. So
yeah, but it's all a theory, right? That's why the scientific language is hypothesis, right? That means it's an educated guess. This is the language. I've read a lot of those documents, and that's the language they use.
So one guy said we're gonna burn in hell for deceiving people. Well, you get up here and defend your position because you can't defend your position, can you?
Don't argue.
You can just regurgitate.
Don't argue. Don't even waste your time with that troll. I'll take care of him later. Trust me.
we gonna go to hell for talking about DNA.
Right.
My goodness.
You let him sit in his miserable little feces and just let him sit there.
So real quick to bring it back to the convo. So I think like a devil's advocate question for the people who rock with the E1B1A concept would be like, well, if you're not going with the counting yourself by the father, are you saying that are you autosomally Israelites like a sojourner or not like tribal, or how do you rock with that? How do you explain that?
Okay, what's the question to us?
Yeah, please repeat.
So basically, I think someone who would rock with the E1B1A concept, just as like a devil's advocate question, it would seem that if you're connecting yourself to Israel autosomally, that you're not doing it based on trying to count yourself via your father's father's father, etc. Right? So in that vein, are you saying that you're a sojourner or that you're a tribal part of Israel?
Well, if we look at the autosomal, which matches us, which says we're relatives, right, which matches us to Lemba, who historically and traditionally considered to be Israelites, then we are Israel.
Right. I
Now,
mean, autosomal is not maternal. Autosomal can be paternal or maternal. You don't know, right? But it's more accurate than haplogroup. So this is the problem. The problem is that the haplogroup argument is not valid. Okay, it's not valid. Look, when I first started looking at this, there's this white woman, and she's well known in haplogroup theory.
Mhm.
I went to her. I asked her. I said, "Well, okay, look, I'm trying to learn. Explain to me how the Chadians are R1B and the Europeans' main genetic DNA is R1B as well." She blocked me and called me a racist. I'm like blown away. Okay. This was an innocent question from a guy trying to learn. Okay. This is a white woman who's well known in this area. That tells you that there's a problem with the whole theory. So, if we continue to try to think that E1B1A plays any validity in identifying our heritage, it's not true. Okay. And if you look at the people that push this E1B1A thing, what they're going to teach you most of the time, they're going to go and talk about this tribe, that tribe. Look at this tribe. That tribe is, they're not going to talk about the science. They're not, these people that's pushing that's in the Israelite community, I haven't heard them talk about the science. They don't defend the scientific position.
You want to touch on that, Yukina?
Well, I would say, I mean, if a person with R1B, mainly we know that Europeans have it, but we don't talk about the Eskimos who carry the R marker, or even the Indians, right, in India and all those places that carries that marker. And he's correct. There are people within Northern Africa or around the Chad area that actually carries the R1B marker.
Well,
So
here's the thing. Go ahead. The dominant theory right now in the scientific community is the out of Africa concept or theory. Okay, and if all mankind originated out of Africa, all of those haplogroups originated out of Africa. This is why you have the black Chadians with R1B, a black tribe in Chad, right? I mean, the whole community of the Chadians, for the most part, are R1B, but yet you see Europeans with R1B. Why? Because the migration over time, right? There was no white people in the beginning, right? It was all black folks. All of these tribes in the Bible, you see, even our enemies were black. Okay. European, the way Caucasoid people that we understand today as being white, they are a new breed. Okay. And so they inherited R1B from someone in Africa, right? And if you're going to accept the out of Africa theory, which is the dominant theory.
I can say this: there's a lot of Fulani who have R1B. There's a bunch of people. There's a few different Afro-Asiatic connected people in West Africa that have R1B.
And just to let y'all know, and we showed it on one of our videos, there's what they call a SNP tracker. Yeah. And it'll show you those migration of the different haplogroups out of Africa. Every single one.
Migratory pattern.
Migratory patterns. Exactly. That's all haplogroups really tell you is migration patterns.
Well, look, let me pull that up for you guys. You mind if I share that?
No, you can share whatever you want to. Go ahead.
Okay. Let's see here.
Why he pulling it up? My thought is this, bro, at this point. Like, if you hate Israelites so much, why you be in Israelite chats? Like, let us build, let us do what we're going to do. You can't stand us, move on. But the more you keep pressing, the more I'm going to start cooking you weirdos. See, that's not them. That's the Anon saying that.
Hey, let me know when you guys are ready to show.
Is up.
I'm going to give it right to you. But
all right, so here's the SNP tracker.
Let me say this real quick, Minister. Leave these brothers alone. Like, they trying to really do right by people. Leave them alone. Like, stop with the nonsense. You've been proven to be psychotic. Leave these brothers alone. They good, solid brothers, man. Go ahead, Minister Taylor.
Yeah, so this is the SNP tracker, right? I put in EV38, which is E1B1A, right? The new one.
Can you scroll that up a
oops,
bit because
let me
the
go.
bottom cut off a bit?
Oh, okay.
There we go.
Yeah, sorry. Okay. I need to run. I'll scroll up once I hit go. All right. But this is the route for E1B1A. Never left Africa. Okay. Now, if you assume this area here is our land, right, or modern Israel, you never left Africa. You never entered the Levant, right? So how is E1B1A Israel when they never left Africa? If you believe that this area is our homeland, which we don't, right? But I'm just saying, if you go with that theory, you never left. Okay.
Yeah, speaking about what you just said, I got to have you come back on the second time at least, so we can discuss your concept of where Israel is, etc. And also in relation to the work of another scholar I've had on this channel here, Miss Dana Marnici, etc. So we definitely going to talk about that. But yeah, please go ahead.
No, that's all I had as far as showing the SNPs tracker, right, to show your migration route, right? Mm-hmm. And most of the E1B1A proponents believe that we're somewhere over there in the Levant area, right? So if that's the case, once again, besides Ramses being one of your problems is the migration route does not support your argument as well. Now, it does support the Hamite theory, right? It does support Ramses III and you being a descendant of an Egyptian, if you believe that, because E1B1A never left Africa, right? But it doesn't support your Israelite theory.
All right, so real quick, family, I'm gonna play a video clip of when I went on the Dagger Squad and asked them a couple of questions about migration, about jet match, and genetics, etc., whatnot. But there was a response by Garfield and Ngozi that I want the panel to respond to and see what everyone thinks. So real quick, let me find the clip. Here we go.
That's fair. The Orthodox Moor, you up? What you got to say, brother?
Yeah, real quick. I just wanted to ask you a couple of questions on your position on Israelites in West Africa and then the Lemba overall.
All right, hold on. We're going to get to that. We're going to get to that. Hold on a second. Me and Ngozi, we have a section for you. Right now, we need.
I got a quick question for Ngozi real quick so I can understand what he was saying.
All right, go ahead.
So, just so I understand, for the people who are Israelite in America claiming that they're connected to the Lemba, you're saying that's not correct in the sense that when their DNA connects to their Bantu to the Lemba Bantu DNA, not the Semitic DNA within the Lemba, correct?
Yes, partially right. Partially, it's more to
partially
it.
Right. Correct. There's more to it than that. Yes.
Okay.
You could tell that you actually understand. I respect that question. I respect that. But we gonna talk about. He said it earlier. But Ngozi, I gotta slow you down on the video, man. I gotta do a
for real. Yeah, so they go on further to say in another video that that Sister E can't be an Israelite even if she is connected to the Lemba because she can only be connected to them through mitochondrial DNA, and she can't connect to the J marker, and she can't be an Israelite because she's not connected to the J marker, etc. So yeah, please respond.
Let me comment. I don't recognize, I don't acknowledge the J marker. That's nonsense. Okay, they want to go with that because the J marker ties to the Ashkenaz, who are European. Okay, Elrin Elhake, a Jew, said that his people are not the people of the book. He said his people are from the Caucasus or the Khazars, right? He's a genetic scientist, right? From his studies, he said his own people are not the people of the book. But what they're trying to do is tie that J to Israel because those people have quite a few J's in their lineage, right? It's not valid. It's not relevant. So that's not even an argument he can make. That's a false claim. Now, you go ahead and dig up a few bodies, right? If you go find a grave of Israelites, right, from 1,000 years ago. Run that DNA, then we could talk. And I'm not talking one person. We need a pattern history, right? Because one person can have a different haplogroup. We need a pattern. So you go dig up about 100 Israelites, right? Run that DNA, and then we can talk. Let's see what that haplogroup says. Don't give me I don't want to hear about no J. We're not Ashkenaz. We're not claiming to be. We're claiming to be the biblical people of the book, the Hebrew Israelites of the Bible.
But here's my thing, right? Just because Sister E, is MT, right? Maternal. Her test was maternal because she didn't apparently go through her father's DNA to test it, right? He wants to say that means she's not Israel, but yet Israel shows up in her blood. Regardless, for the autosomal test, she Lemba. For the autosomal test, she got Ethiopian in there. I mean, I'm sorry, it's matching. What foolishness is that? I don't get it. It's still there in her DNA. What is he talking about?
It's a false claim he's trying to play, right? But his false assumption was that J has any relevance here. We're not claiming to be Ashkenaz. That's not relevant for us.
Y'all want to touch on that? You can on Nana?
Man, my fault. I'm slapping in the chat.
Yeah, because I don't know. I'm trying to throw you a Garfield alley-oop right now. You know what I'm saying?
What did you play about Garfield? You know, I can snatch it. As soon as you throw it to me, I snatch it. What did you play with it?
So yeah, I played a clip to where basically they were trying to stipulate that we connect to the Lemba via Bantu DNA and not any Semitic DNA, because their argument is that so if you connect to the Lemba, you should have a J marker, etc. All them kind of things. And also the sister E cannot be an Israelite even if she is connected to the Lemba, because she, as a female, as a female, she can't hold the J marker. So ironically, what they're saying, no matter what, that a woman can't be an Israelite is what it sounds like on that one.
Let's go ahead and deal with the Natufian real quick. Number one, I challenge people to go and study the Teotw DNA, right? This is what pours into or contributes to much of your Middle Eastern, and I'm using air quotes here, DNA. And the reason that becomes specific is because now as we move into Mesolithic or these various different time periods, we start to find out that this E haplogroup is the ancient haplogroup, right? And we can have this conversation. We can go into breakdowns of the separate identifications in the E, but we see these Teotwians having an E haplogroup. This becomes important because once we start to look at the common connection between various Jewish, once again, using air quotes, and I'm not trying to attack anyone's heritage, various, we'll say Middle Eastern Abrahamic faiths, haplogroups, the connection is going to be a lot of E and J. You see some J, right? But a lot of us have small portions of J, right? That's the funny part. Even the Lemba. So as we start to go into this, though, we have to deal with these on an individual basis, but then too, we have to deal with genetic migration patterns. So the funny part is, 1 second, these people will say there is no Jewish gene, but then when you say, okay, well then why you're attacking me? Oh, because J haplogroup. I want you to understand what I just said. If I ask you what is the quote unquote gene that I'm supposed to be looking for, I'm gonna stop saying that word because I know what people like to do with that name. I won't get no channels flagged. But when we start to deal with it and I ask you what should be my haplogroup, you're gonna tell me J. But then when I say, well, what about outside of that, or why do other people have things in common? Or when I say, what is the actual haplogroup? Oh, there is no specific haplogroup that speaks to those people. That's a serious problem. And that is a bright red flag to let you know that people are playing games. You need to call them to the mat. You have to address migratory patterns because those migratory patterns speak to the reference panel. And I'm going to sound like a broken record, because it seems that people do not understand DNA. You have to tell me where I originate from. Where do I come from? Where do my brothers come from to where we both start to identify with a certain group of people? How does that work? Why is my most modern population group the same group as these people when we got the same claim? And if you want to play games, they light skinned, I'm dark skinned. How that work? You know why? Because migratory patterns play a huge role in this conversation. And once you get up to speed and get to the point where you can have this conversation, then we can do it. But until then, bro, I'm going to destroy you. I'm going to hurt you. I'm going to hurt your feelings. You're going to call me names. I'm going to laugh at you. I'm going to point out how you're being ignorant. And then you're going to go on your channel.
Nightmares about EM180 and whatnot. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Wake up in cold sweats. EM180.
EM1A. And then you're going to become a proverb or a byword out here, right? Like, stop playing these games, bro. We're more than equipped. The first thing many of us do is we study DNA when we come into this. We want to know, is it true? Like, how are we making these conversations? How do we end up where we saying? Nobody's trying to be arrogant or anything like that. We're just trying to have a conversation. And I think the brothers brought it out. You told us we needed to get the DNA. We got the DNA, then you move the goalpost. Like, we keep chasing your goalpost down, knocking it over, and then all of a sudden it's something else. Man, miss me with that. Leave us alone because we about to build. It is what it is.
Yes, sir. So, quick question to everybody on the panel. What is y'all's perception on the mixed multitude concept? And should we expect, via just that one concept, should we expect Israel to all look like one genetic and phenotypical concept?
Well, I definitely want to comment on that because I hear that nonsense too much, right? Okay, so Israel, they left Egypt with a mixed multitude, but that mixed multitude was black folk, right? Mostly Egyptians, okay? And according to the scriptures, that's who left with them, okay? Now, in the scattering, yeah, Israel is mixed because they're in the land of their captivity globally. But you can't deny what you're seeing today in our JED match results, right? They're all matching up. They're all lining up. That is the Israelite DNA, right? That Lemba tie, that Yemenite Jew, that Moroccan Jew, that Ethiopian Jew tie, you can't deny it, okay? And then you dig into the history reaffirms it. You dig into skull patterns, and a lot of us are dolichocephalic, right? And they only dug up ancient Israelites a long time ago, and they were dolichocephalic, while the Ashkenaz are brachiocephalic, something like that, right? Okay, and so I'm like, it's not just DNA. This is real homework for y'all, right? There's skull patterns, there's skeletal matches, there's a lot going on here. There's the history, there's the Bible references, right? DNA is a small part of this.
Anyone else? All right, sounds like somebody might be getting sniped in the chat.
Well, let's look at it this way. If they all wanted truth, right, they wouldn't be looking to always negate what we say, right? I mean, some of what we say has to be valid, right? But they don't want to look at that and say, yes, this part is valid, but, let's discuss this part. No, it's not like that. They're looking for things to fit their identity because they identify as Hotep, right? And so since they're Hoteps, that means they don't have to believe in the God of the Bible. And if they don't have to believe in the God of the Bible, then there's no judgment for all the foolishness they're doing behind the scenes, which everybody know they're doing the foolishness behind the scenes. And that's why they're fighting so hard to deny who we are, because if it is true that we are the people of the book and that the prophecies are being fulfilled, then guess what? Some of them are going to be judged, right? Because they don't believe in the only begotten son. So they have a motive to not want to know the truth because I guarantee you, most of them live in foul.
Can I tap in on some of that real quick on this mixed multitude?
Yes, sir.
You know I'm gonna go in. I ask people to tell me where the mixed multitude come from. So first off, let's deal with what we talking about when we deal with Goshen. We dealing with a virus. So who are these people in the virus? Number one, we know these are Asiatics, but we also know we got two different type of Asiatics. We got a Syro-Palestinian and we got this nomadic Asiatic. And then the other thing that we see brought up is the Nubian. We see them snatching Nubians up from lower Egypt or say upper Egypt or southern Egypt. Right? I can show you all of this in history and as we go into archaeology. Why does that become specific? Because then we start dealing with Taharka. Uh-oh. Right? Understand, like the brother said, these are black people. These are dark people. These are dark-skinned people. Now, we can play with the DNA, and trust me, we can get into that. But make no mistake, family. Even when in the Bible, when it talks about coming out of mixed multitude, we see Ethiopian involved with that. Right? We're not going to play no games with you. It's too easy to deal with this. History affirms what we see happening.
So here's the thing. They need to acknowledge the fact that what we see in the so-called Middle East today is not the way it was even 100, 200 years ago.
Facts.
Okay. Facts. And these people who are dominating Egypt and the Middle East today are the majority of them, if not, let's say the majority of them are Turkish. Okay. And I mean, I watched this brother. I don't know if you watch Go Black, right? Go Black to Africa. And
I've heard him. I ain't watched him yet, though.
Yeah, he went to Egypt. He talked to an Egyptian guy. The Egyptian guy admits that the original Egyptians were black, but he says he got some of that black in him. He said, but it's the Turkish invasion that made him look like he looks today. Right? So, he came out and admit that it's the Turkish invasion that makes the Middle East look like it does today. Right? The Ottoman Turks dominated all of that area.
And look, we can prove this with the Pashtun people. I was just having this conversation earlier. When you go to Afghanistan, you see the same concept, bro. Like, we can do this all day long. Keep going, bro.
He was giving you the floor back.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I'm done. I mean, it's just, the fact that these people don't understand history. Right. Okay, so history is hitting them in the face. And the history that references us. Look, if we're not Israel, why is it we can find hundreds of documents saying that we are? Okay. I mean, we don't even have to go to DNA. The history supports us.
Right.
Yeah, and to touch on, give my 2 cents on the whole mixed multitude concept. When I look at the ancient DNA in that area, I'm talking about like from the Nile Valley to Western Arabia, to going all the way down to Yemen, etc. And then I look at the Levant, etc. I should be seeing like EP2. I should be seeing the Natufian DNA. I should be seeing E1B1A. I should be seeing EM215. I should be seeing EM34. I should be seeing EM35. I should be seeing R1B. I should be seeing T. I should be seeing J1. Those were all in Africa, Western Arabia, and the Levant, all at the same time, man. Like that's a lot, man. That's a lot of people to keep track of right there. But also a lot of people who are going to have, if they're around each other and they're intermixing for a long time in any way, shape, or form, through trade, through religion, through whatever, you know what I'm saying, you're going to see there's going to have an autosomal link somewhere. So again, there's a reason why we can all have different haplogroups. Again, my haplogroup completely predates the split between E1B1A and E1B1B. It predates that joint, but yet I'm still coming up with similar autosomal markings that these brothers have.
Well, I need someone to validate for me that haplogroup should be considered valid. Okay, because I think it's totally not valid. Okay, as far as identifying, your ancestry. This is why it's not used. You know, you don't get haplogroups to identify, you know, who your father is or your child. So, you know, and that's what I keep going back to the documents. Y'all go pull up those documents and watch the language. I mean, the language tells you whether or not they consider this definitive, factual science or not. And I mean, the majority of the ones I've read, they all have words like might be, could be, hypothesize, theory. It's in all the documents I've read. So I'm like, you know, I think, you know, we've been bullied into accepting this idea that haplogroup has a place that is valid. And in my opinion, it's not.
Yes, sir. So with that, family, I'm going to play another clip because I do believe that Abu and Vocab Malone were talking about the twins and their perception on DNA. And when they were talking about it, they played a small clip from a long video that may or may not have been played in or out of context. So I want to play it for the family and let the twins expound upon it. They already talked about it here. And I think what they've talked about in terms of autosomal concepts will help illuminate what they're going to say further. But I wanted to give the brothers a chance to be able to clarify and expound if they wanted to on what was said concerning what Abu and Vocab had thought, what they perceived their thoughts to be on it. So real quick, I'm just going to play this clip for the family.
All right, here we go.
Minister Teotw, according to this particular guy, he lives his life as a white guy. His I'm assuming autosomal numbers are 97.5% European composition, 2.3% sub-Saharan, but yet his haplogroup is E1B1A. Now, according to Ron Dalton and the line that is a coward, isn't E1B1A supposed to be Israel? Well, what they're going to say is, well, you know, he had black in his family. As you see, they're free colored persons. Yes, they are. But if he's 97.5%, that's more than most of us. If you go test your DNA being African, he's 97.5% European, makes him European. So therefore, according to Ron Dalton and according to the line that is a coward, this guy would have to be an Israelite. Minister Teotw.
Now, let me know if I break up. But that shows you the faulty reasoning that they have, which is what we've been trying to show you guys for quite some time now.
You're breaking up.
Okay, well, hopefully it'll adjust, right? But we've been trying to show you guys this problem that they have with this logic about how they use E1B1A. Basically, they're saying anyone with E1B1A is Israel. So by their logic, this 97.5% European is Israel. Now, if you put that in jet match, you're going to see nothing but European, almost 90, you'll see 97.5% Europeans popping up as his match. Pop, 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 right? 97.5% Europeans will be coming up on his result set. Okay? 2.5% will come up as African. But yet they're going to say he Israel because E1B1A is the Israelites. That does not work.
Okay, is that it? That's it, right?
Yeah, that.
Okay.
What's weird about that is like, it's not like in the context of a debate where someone's pressing them like a hypothetical question or something. They're actually bringing this up, pushing this themselves.
Yeah, they're using it as an argument against Ron Dalton's position, right?
Wait,
and so
who are they referring to saying the liar that is
I don't know.
coward?
I think it was somebody that was on. I don't know for certain, but I think they were referring to someone who was maybe on a show with Ron Dalton, and I think they're making fun of his screen name. I don't know for certain. I don't know.
So
who
they're just
to,
straight up saying the lion who was a coward. They're just straight up calling him that the whole time.
Yeah, I assume it's a play on name. I don't know who they're referring to. But if let's say the gentleman's name was the Mighty Lion, hypothetically speaking, they would, something like that. I don't know who they were. But the gist of that is, so they're saying, Ron Dalton takes this position. If you have this marker, right, you have this paternal marker, then you're an Israelite, right? Now they're saying, well, that can't be possible because, we found this guy out here. There's an article about him. He has that paternal marker, but most of his, ancestry is European, and he's morphologically white. Like he would fit your stereotype of a quote unquote white person based on his outward appearance. So therefore, he can't be an Israelite. Now, think about the implications of this. What they seem to be saying, or at least is the implication. Let's suppose we went into this guy's lineage and, I don't know, 20, 30 generations back, his father's line goes back to a descendant of a victim of the transatlantic slave trade, right? Let's say, hypothetically speaking, working within their paradigm, within the paradigm of both Ron Dalton and the Teotw Ministries, let's assume that if you go back in this guy's line, you're going to find an Israelite.
On the Y
his
side.
Paternal line.
Okay.
Yes, on his father's line.
Yeah.
And that Israelite has a son with a quote-unquote white woman, a quote-unquote white non-Israelite, right? Then their child, their son, has a son, another son with yet another quote-unquote white woman who's not an Israelite. Then that child, you know, and so on and so on. They keep, each son keeps having a son with
30,
a woman who...
30 generations of white women.
Yeah, and so as a result, you get this guy who fits their stereotype of a white person, but his paternal line, hypothetically speaking, goes back to an Israelite. What they're basically saying, what they're insinuating, is that you can descend paternally from Jacob and not be an Israelite based on your morphology, based on your outward appearance. And I think that's important because it shows how starkly different that is from like the standard One West position. Because for them to make a big deal about what his other lines are, aside from his paternal line, the implication is you can have a descendant of Jacob, a paternal descendant of Jacob. His father's father goes all the way back to Jacob, but he's not an Israelite because he's, you know, quote unquote white. His skin is too light, his hair is too straight, etc., because of the women in his family.
This almost makes the One West position superior.
So real quick, I wanted to give y'all a chance to respond to what.
Can I do something right quick?
Oh, please.
I'm sorry. I had to laugh. I'm sorry.
No worries, fam. This is a laugh-friendly zone. We have a few laughers on the panel who are known to laugh at very opportune times. Don't even worry about it. Yeah, I wanted to give you all a chance to respond to how they took what you said and how what you said should be taken.
Well, I think we've always made the case that you cannot determine who's a Jew from DNA. I started off this show right here with that. Dr. Nathaniel Jennison states that you cannot determine who's a Jew genetically. That's been our case from the beginning. Our whole case about the haplogroups not being used to determine who's who. I'm like, I don't know. Who was he listening to? Because apparently he didn't get understanding.
Well, I mean, you know, we're arguing against Dalton's position about the E1B1A versus autosomal, right? And so, as we said, you know, this guy is 97% European. He has, for their example, 30 generations of white. How can a 97% match be an Israelite, right? When he matches 97% of European people. So, you know, that's the argument there. But I don't know why, you know, I guess they're using it to go against the E1B1A position. But see, this is the problem with the haplogroup argument, is that it's causing confusion everywhere because, you know, when you're looking at haplogroup and someone says, hey, I'm R1, oh, I'm G, oh, I'm E, but I'm not E1B1A, I'm E1B1B, you know, but we all have autosomal matches, then, you know, you're producing confusion over a single mutation on a chromosome. One chromosome out of 23 pairs, okay? And you're trying to use that to state, to make a claim of being an Israelite. One mutation, okay? And as I said, that's not doable with the current argument. If you look at the papers, right, the scientists are using theory as their position, hypothesis, educated guess. Okay, so we just need to accept that the argument is not something that's the law of the land. Okay, the only place that haplogroup is being presented as something valuable is by 23andMe, Ancestry.com, not even Ancestry.com, but the ones that are selling haplogroup tests, they are the ones pushing this, okay? But the papers don't support that this is something that you can use. And if y'all watched our video, you can also have failed haplogroup tests for various reasons, right? There are many reasons why your results will be different. There was a guy, there was a guy who followed us. He emailed us, and even he had 3 different haplogroup results from 3 different companies. There was a brother we talked to like 4 years ago. Same thing. You know, he had a 0 for one result, E1B1A for another result, and then I forgot what the third, but they were all different. So once again, that's another area that's an area of contention. This is an area that proves that you can't and you should not rely on haplogroup.
And see, just to add to that again, is that Abu makes the mistake of assuming that we were trying to prove that you can use haplogroups to determine who's who. Our whole point was trying to show that the way that Ron Dalton and others are using haplogroups is incorrect. That based upon how they're using it, if that white boy who's 97.5% European yet have a haplogroup of E1B1A, right? If he's matching autosomally to European, then how can he be E1B1A? Because I wouldn't think that they would consider him to be an Israelite, would they? Seeing that 97.5%.
Well, they would have no choice.
I know, that's what I'm saying. But Abu makes the mistake that we were trying to prove either way that this guy is not an Israelite based upon haplogroups. No, we weren't making the case that haplogroups are legit. No, we were showing the fallacy of the use of haplogroup to try and determine anybody.
Right. We've said from the beginning that the best way to identify who is Israel are the curses of Deuteronomy 28. Now, they could go after that, and a lot of people backpedal from that, but them curses, they line up with our people, right? Our history is 1-to-1 with that. Okay, so from our position, the curses are the way you identify who is Israel. You know, it just so happens that, you know, when they called out Sister E, they opened up a Pandora's box, and they started seeing all this DNA matches to Lemba and Jew references everywhere, right? They opened that Pandora box themselves.
Okay, so real quick, as a quick devil's advocate question, because I heard what Abu was saying. So just to be clear, you're not making an argument that there's a singular phenotype for Israel, and because that person was 97% European, he didn't fit that phenotype, and that's why he couldn't be considered Israel. Correct? That's not
obviously right. I mean, based upon what we just said, obviously, because guess what? Israel today comes in many colors, right? Even if we look at the historical books, right, they talk about some Israelites were dark black, right? Some Israelites were brown, what they call boxwood color, right? Israel came in many colors and definitely still come in many colors today. And I wouldn't say that somebody who might look white, because I know people who grew up black, grew up with the curses, and they could pass for white, right? So I'm not going to say they're not Israel. We've never made that case or that distinction.
Right. And those people, you know, a lot of those people that were forced into Africa during the Inquisition, right, during the Spanish Inquisition, a lot of, you know, there's references to some Israelites that look white, right? There was a book that referenced that, right? But where are they today? Right. Those are some that probably had mixed with some of the European people, but they were still Israelites and got kicked out and went to Africa. Okay, well, forced to go to Africa. So you know, phenotype is not what we're saying. What we're saying is if you're going to go with that argument, you're looking at a person that has a 22 his autosomal 22 chromosomal pairs, right? He's 97% white, right? So if you go by that, and then you try to make the argument that this one single mutation on this one chromosome, which happens to be Y, is legit, and that you can say that he's an Israelite, that doesn't make sense. You have 97% of the 22 chromosomes point this guy to European, but they're going to say a single mutation on a Y chromosome, one chromosome, is enough to identify Israelite. Can't be. That's all we're saying. You can't do that when you have 22 compared to 1.
Well, I definitely appreciate y'all for clarifying your position on that and making it known for the people. Something I wanted to touch on right quick, since I have y'all here, was your position on what the UA was saying as the requirements is for how we should use GEDmatch. and I want to preclude what you're saying based upon the fact that we had the people on this panel, me, Hukanan, and Anonymous, have all been on panel with Sister Salam, and we were discussing her concepts and her theories on this. And ironically, she told Anonymous and Yehukanan that they shouldn't use the MDLP projects, but that I should, because I have admixture. And so I'm assuming since I saw your ancestry.com results, being that you're not 100% African either, I'm assuming that she would say the same thing to you, that you should use the MDLP project, etc. So what's your take on their guidelines on how we should use the GEDmatch, and what's your take on what they said for us in terms of who can and can't use the MDLP projects?
Well, I would say you can't tell me what to do, right? You can't tell me what project I can use. Okay. The bottom line is the idea with using these services is to identify matches. Obviously, MDLP found matches. Okay. We didn't manipulate the data. We didn't manipulate anything. MDLP ran our results, right? Ran our file, compared them, and produced results and said, hey, you match Lemba. Hey, you have Jewish DNA. We didn't do anything but use the tool, okay? Ideally, if we weren't a match, it should have said we did not find a match, right? You go run our DNA against Europeans, you're not going to find a lot except for maybe some results from rape. But the bottom line is the expectation should be, if you use the wrong project, if there is one, if you use the wrong project, you should get no results. Okay, there's no false matching. Either it's a 1-to-1, either it's a match, either they found a match or they didn't. Okay, so,
and
but hey,
because when you do certain projects, you get 0 matches. Continue, bro.
Correct. Yeah. And so on top of that, you go to DotyCAD. We ran those. Oh, you said don't use MDLP. We go use that DotyCAD. They told us to use that one now. They told us to use that one. And when we run it, what we get? Moroccan Jew, Ethiopian Jew, Yemenite Jew, right? It's not, nothing's right for these people.
Yeah, I want to show something. Let me share my screen on GEDmatch real quick, because I'm going to tell you MDLP was the perfect match to use. Let me share my screen real quick more, if you don't mind.
You got it.
GEDmatch right now, and I want to show you something. Okay, so let me know when y'all can see my screen.
Yes.
Y'all see? Okay, so here's it. It says search for admixture oracles, right? So now look at this. I'm gonna put in Afro-American, right? Because that's what we would be considered as, right? Now watch what they recommend for Afro-American. MDLP project. Look at that. This is what they're recommending. If you consider yourself an African American or Afro-American, they recommend the MDLP project. So
drop the mic.
She was lying.
Wait, whoa. I want to get clarification. So you just proved to the people that according to GEDmatch, we should be using that type of genetic search to find out our most common or popular.
Yeah, if you consider yourself, if you consider yourself Afro-American, that's what they recommend. You can put in whatever you think you are. If you think you're Russian, you type in Russian and they'll recommend the projects.
Well, don't forget the letters that Dante got back from the GEDmatch company, okay? And he followed it to the T, did exactly what they said. He asked them the right questions. Is this wrong to use? They said, no, you can use it. So, I mean, they're trying to, look, the bottom line is these people know they got a judgment coming, okay? And they're scared. And so if we Israel, that's what they're afraid of, all right? But the evidence is overwhelming. The Ish people don't have to go through this type of scrutiny to prove who they claim they are.
So what do you say about the claim that we should be using the Ethio helix, and if you have European admixture, that you should be using the Ethio helix with the with the French K10 etc. project, and if it doesn't come up, if something doesn't come up there, it's not legitimate, etc.
We got our instructions from the company. What are they talking about? The company told us how to use it, and we followed their instructions and did it according to their instructions. So they could say we need to do whatever. It doesn't matter. I would recommend that they go back and watch Dante's video and look at the letters that he got back from the company.
And just for the record, I think that's a dagger. Just sit here and keep eating my dinner.
Yeah, and just for the record, since we're doing Jet Match stuff, I'm going to share my screen right quick. So I happen to put my kit.
What we sharing?
So I happen to put my kit in the Ethio Helix K10, and lo and behold, my joint still came up Ethiopian Jew. And hold on, let me do it like this because I got to stop and share it again. But I also have like 12, 14 to 18% Native American in my genetics and whatnot. So they have another Ethio Helix that also works with that. They have the Ethio Helix K10 Japanese or whatnot, where they throw the Native American and the Japanese, and they still have a European slot. So on that one, now just to be clear, everywhere in the Ethio Helix, I still come up with every project I come up with Ethiopian Jewish, all of them on Ethio Helix.
Yeah, I did too.
I knew a few people that did like that. You know what I'm saying? Now I'll be real. I put a whole bunch of people from the UA community through there. You know what I'm saying? And not a single one of them came up Ethiopian Jews. I was like, oh, isn't that interesting?
Slavers. Slavers.
Don't be put. Did he just put gunball on people? No, don't do that. Anyway, hold on right quick, family. So yeah, so here's my Ethio Helix K10 Japanese. So you can see where it has. Hold on. Yeah, it breaks down where my Native American pops up in the Japanese, etc. And you can see there still Ethiopian Jewish shows up. So yeah, I'm gonna be doing a long show on that one eventually, where I do a full breakdown on what Salam said, and not just that, but where they had a presentation on Garfield's channel with an African gentleman where they tried to show a Fulani person's DNA through Jet Match and how it didn't work and all that type of stuff. And I'm definitely gonna jump on that one because the Fulani brother they ended up using has the same white DNA haplogroup as myself. I'm gonna have a lot of fun breaking that one down.
So then you say that proves the twins' perspective of well, we need to be careful about just leaning on haplogroups. Oh, okay.
Yeah, and we definitely need to be careful about leaning on this E1B1A. We're all E1B1A concept, right? Because it's verifiable. Like, so for instance, when we were doing when Garfield was trying to tell you couldn't be EM180, right? He was literally reading something on 23andMe that said that 60% of the people or the males that came through the slave trade were EM180, right?
Right.
But that also means that 40% of the males are not. Hence you got some people, and this is where, like, I love talking to Anonymous about this, because Anonymous is always talking about psychology and epigenetics and whatnot, right? So you got some of us who we're phenotypically African, who have genetics who link back to people in the Levant, people in certain parts of Africa that have these Jewish genetics, like Ethiopian, etc., North African, etc. But not everyone who has our phenotype does. But the ones of us who do, we're banding together and coming together and talking about certain things and trying to build certain things and trying to and understanding certain things, and we're unifying upon certain things and whatnot.
So what you saying is epigenetically we doing what our DNA is supposed to be doing? That's what you're saying?
I'm saying I'm trying to give you the alley-oop Gary Payton, Sean Kemp style. You should
appreciate you, bro. Let me go ahead and dunk this real quick. See, there's a reason, family, like the other communities will say it's spookism, it's spooky. No, this is science. See, there's a reason that we all having this same conversation and we waking up at the same time and we doing this, because epigenetically, right? Our genetics are identifying. So when people keep applying, the more pressure that you keep applying, the more our genetics is going to respond a certain way. That's how epigenetics works. Go ahead and look it up. Go ahead and study it. This is how we are starting to identify who we are, because we are all coming to the table saying, yes, that's me. I identify with them people, no matter how crazy you say I am, no matter what it is, genetically, internally, mentally, emotionally, psychologically, I represent that. I identify with that. That's science. Once again, I don't have any debate with anybody on that. Like, these are my brothers. We're not going to always agree on everything. Don't get it twisted. But these are my brothers. That's why we can have this conversation. We know that we getting ready to go home, whatever that looks like. However the Most High worked that out, we getting ready to go home. That's why we're able to do this. And the more science catches up with what we've already known, what's been programmed in our DNA, the more you're going to see it. I yield.
Yeah, family. This has been a very, very, very interesting conversation. Well, first of all, to the twins, what do y'all want to say about epigenetics, if anything?
I'm good.
What about you, Yakoba? I'll take it that Yakoba is good as well. Yehukanan, do you want to touch on epigenetics at all?
No, I'm good.
Yeah, I think that epigenetics is something that even on the biblical level becomes interesting when there's concepts spoken of, like someone's blood screaming to the Most High from the ground. I think that there's a very honest look at this concept of epigenetics that we need to take a look at. And again, understand that maybe this this gathering of people isn't an unexplainable phenomenon. Maybe it's extremely explainable. But with that, family, we're running up on the 2-hour mark. So I want to give everybody a chance to close out and speak their piece and say what they got to say on this whole thing. So we'll start off with the twins, and we can end up with the Hukanon Anonymous and myself and whatnot.
Yeah, this Minister Teotw. I just like to say one of the pet peeves that I have, you're not gonna get past me on, is the Atlantic slave trade. Okay, you're not gonna ignore that. Okay, you want to do a show on us, you want to do a hit piece on us, you best explain why our people went through the crap we went through. Okay, there's not another race of people in the history of this planet went through the horror that our people went through. Somebody gonna explain that. Lucky for you, the Most High did it. He explained it, right? And it's right there in the scriptures. You can't deny it. We the only people that line up with it. Okay. But none of y'all been through that stuff. Y'all want to tell us, forget about it. It don't matter. No, it matters. The crap y'all put us through reverberates to this day. And you can watch it with the George Floyd case. You can watch it. Our brothers are getting killed every single day. Okay. There's an unnatural hatred for our people by the world. Okay. It needs to be explained. Well, we got the answers. It don't matter if you don't believe it. Them hoteps don't mean nothing to me. They can move on. Okay. I don't even respect that nonsense, but that's all.
Yeah, go ahead, Yakoba. Yakoba seems like he may be indisposed. Go ahead, Yuka.
Okay, let me share my screen real quick. I'm gonna go to Black demographics, and I want to show something. I was telling Yara about this. All right, so let me know when everybody can see this see my screen or see what I'm looking at with this.
You got it.
Can y'all see?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so this is black demographics and just African American DNA. Okay. Now, when you start looking at your ancestry, most of the time, your most recent or most moderate population or community is going to show up, and it's going to be the most. Okay, so they say that the African Americans, the normal African American, has 74% sub-Saharan African, 22% European, 1% Native, and 2% other. Now, this other could be Middle Eastern DNA. It could be a range of anything. And we know that we have some people, you know what I'm saying, of course, on this panel that has Middle Eastern DNA. Now, the reason why it would be low is because we have not been in that land, or we haven't been in that area for a while. So the more lower your percentage is, that's more in antiquity. You understand what I'm saying? So according to Ancestry.com, there are, out of the black people who took the test, they have 4% other. According to 23andMe, the blacks that took the test has 3%. And then with Family Tree DNA, there's people who had 2% other out of the African Americans that took the test, and with African DNA, they had people of 2%. And so, if you do have Middle Eastern DNA that shows up, and like we're saying, hey, you know, we are the people, you're not gonna have no 50 or 60% Middle Eastern DNA, because we have not been there. Like I said, our most recent is sub-Saharan Africa, because we was on the west coast of Africa. So we do have people who do have Middle Eastern DNA. It shows in a small percentage, but that goes with the narrative of antiquity. And with that, I'm gonna yield the mic. I appreciate being on with Twins and with Anonymous, and I thank you for having me, More.
Nah, I appreciate you for being here, brother man. Yakoba, are you there or no?
Yeah, I'm here. I had to step away for a sec. Sorry about that.
No, you good money, fam. So right now we're closing out. So if you want to give your closing remarks or whatnot, that would be greatly appreciated, brother man.
Yeah, all I have to say is do your own research, family. You know, a lot of people are cool at, like, you know, memes and those short statements, and, you know, they form a doctrine or dogma off of little, you know, words repeated multiple times, and they don't want to understand the science. They don't want to understand the history, but they're going to take a position on either side because, you know, they have a preference for some reason. And like I said, I personally believe a lot of the, you know, Kemet people, the Hoteps, I believe they know we Israel. I think they see the history. I think they can tell we're correct on the science. It's just that, you know, they make a living off that side now. And they don't have a relationship with Yeshua. So therefore, they're going to hold on to it and try to lead you down that path of destruction with them. And I say don't go with it.
No, appreciate you. Definitely appreciate both of you for coming on and whatnot, and sharing your wisdom and your perspective and whatnot. Go ahead, now. You got the floor.
Yeah, you know, first off, all praise to the Most High for letting us be able to have this conversation. I want to give a big shout out to the brother SALSHOWTIME for making this platform available. Obviously, shout out to the brothers Minister Yakoba and Minister Teotw for coming on and blessing us with their knowledge and their perspective. It's always a great opportunity to hear from you, brothers. I hope to build with you some in the future. You know, it's my goal to reach out to you, brothers, and see what we can start to work on. Always love the perspective. Shout out to Israel. Understand, Israel, like, this is not a race for the swift. This is a race for the consistent. For those that are really seeking the vision and the purpose of the Most High. And I think we're starting to prove that. So don't be afraid. Don't worry about it. They're going to talk about you. They're going to make names. They're going to make memes. They're going to do whatever. But at the end of the day, they don't really want that smoke, right? When it comes down to something on the clock or real conversations where there's no games being played, we know what it turns into. So just always keep the Most High first and stay focused and let him lead all of us into where we need to go. So shout out to the brother Moore for hosting this panel. And as always, shout out to the people. You know what I'm saying? Y'all would keep everybody going. So we appreciate the support and much love and respect. All praise to the Most High. Peace.
Yes, sir. I want to say I appreciate every individual on this panel for being on here and for sharing their wisdom and their thoughts and their perspectives with everyone. I appreciate everyone in the chat for showing up. You know what it is. Y'all could have been anywhere in the world tonight, but y'all was here with us. You know what I'm saying? Much appreciation for that. And always appreciation to Sal Showtime for giving us a platform to build on. Again, family, he's been doing this for over a decade. So if you can find it in your hearts to bless the brother, man, you see his Cash App down below. Appreciate him for letting him use this platform and whatnot. And to the topic, I want to say this just one more time. And something you're going to see me consistently harp on, and people like my brothers Anonymous and other people on this panel harp on, are having like scientific based methods on things. So when we put out our ideas to the people and whatnot, we should definitely be putting out falsifiable methodology. One more time, falsifiable methodology. And so if we're going to say like everyone is E1B1A, whether like all West Africans or all Israelites are E1B1A, we got to be able to falsify that in some way, shape, or form. We can't just say that. If we're going to say people are autosomally Israel, etc., we got to be able to falsify that. We can't just say that. So when people are being able to show test genetically the autosomally linked to things, that's a falsification test, right? And so like the brothers are saying, if you're going to make the claim that everyone is E1B1A, whether it just be Israelite or West African, you have to show that. You got to dig up a bunch of people and show that and falsify the thing. But until then, it can't be just an assumed concept. And I think that's something we all need to take going forward into all the stuff we're bringing out into the community on all the different topics we're talking about, because we owe it to the community that we're gathering with to put our best foot forward scholastically. And to that, again, I want to just remind people like, there's ways to verify what we're talking about historically, genetically, with migration patterns, all kind of stuff. But there's obviously something happening to where a group of people that have some kind of connection on a genetic level are gathering for different reasons, or gathering for similar reasons. Let me say it like that. We don't all agree on this panel about all aspects of doctrine, but there's a lot we do agree on. There's a lot we do agree on. Why is that? Why is that? We shouldn't be ridiculed or shunned because we're asking questions and trying to delve into why that is and try to understand why that is. Because again, we're people who we are a mixed multitude amongst this panel in and of ourselves. But yet again, we are finding connections genetically on all sorts of levels. And then on top of that, we're finding connection on cultural aspects of how we want to walk our lives out. To me, that says a lot. That's not just nothing there. But with that, family, I want to say I appreciate you for your time. I appreciate you for tuning in. I appreciate you for your comments and for your thoughts and your wisdom that you leave in the chat. And please go check out these brothers. I might have their information down below. But again, for the twins, where can people find y'all on social media, family?
On YouTube, Teotw Ministries on YouTube channel, and I have a Facebook account as well, Yacoba Evail.
And do you have a group page on YouTube or no, or on Facebook or no?
What's that? Oh yeah, I do have a Teotw Ministries live group on Facebook. Yes.
Yeah, I believe that's the one I have linked below.
Okay.
So I have the YouTube in that group page linked below, family. If you're interested in more of these brothers' information. So with that, family, we are going to say shalom, peace, and love.